Hey, we're cooking with gas here on the Jewcast.
Okay, careful using a phrase like that.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries of a sham.
Tradition!
Oh, shut up, Carl! Shut your goddamn Jew mouth! You people are why there's war in the Middle East!
Gekackt von Jan.
Nebbig.
Verpoepoepoe.
Vermischt.
Verkackt.
Vertutzt.
Verstonken.
Farted.
Exactly.
You're what Grammy Hall would call a real Jew.
Oh, yeah, here we go again. It's episode 108 of American Jew. My name is Jordan Ferber.
I'm Jonathan Randall. Spring is in the air. We got Passover this weekend. How are you feeling, Jordan?
I feel pretty good. I feel pretty, I'm ready for spring. I'll tell you that. I am ready to start getting out there and complaining about the weather.
Okay. Oh, because you haven't been complaining about the weather enough all winter.
I mean, we all had to endure a hard winter, but now we can finally go out and complain to other people about the weather.
Okay. I don't really think that's a problem for you, Jordan, to complain to. But hey, whatever makes you happy. Passover is this weekend. It's one of the major holidays in the Jewish religion. I guess, last year was kind of very difficult. COVID was just getting started.
Yeah,
People
I didn't have
really getting together.
I didn't have a Seder last year. I know a lot of people did the virtual Seder last year, and there's talk of people trying to do that again, but there are going to be a lot more smaller. I'm doing a small one at my parents' house. It's just going to be the three of us, and I think maybe one friend of theirs and maybe a cousin. Very small this year.
Very nice. Yeah, last year I spent Passover. I had a Seder with my non-Jewish friends who love Judaism. So I was the token Jew. And this year, I don't know, we'll see what happens. Our guest today actually is going to talk, I guess, more about Passover. He just wrote the Seinfeld Haggadah, the Haggadah About Nothing.
I know. We're going to find out what the deal is with that. And
absolutely. And, of course, if you're not already subscribed to our Patreon, you should get on that. A lot of great extra content with some of the amazing guests that we've had over the last bunch of episodes that we've done.
Yes, that is a personal invitation to you to join the party. And speaking of personal invitations to join the party, I got two weird invitations in the mail this week. I got unsolicited, unsigned invitations to join congregations. One from a church in my neighborhood that wanted me to come and help celebrate Easter, which
okay,
that's
nice of them. Very inclusive.
Is also coming up. But then I also got and they're handwritten. I got these. It's like a handwritten envelope with my name spelled correctly. And
wow! Because Jordan doesn't have the A, he has the O, which is quite a problem for him.
I always say, when I have to correct people the spelling, because it's Jordon, people always spell it with an A. I have to fix it by putting an O around it, which makes anarchy. So that's always a problem for them too. But I got an unsigned actual card that somebody bought in a store that says Mazel Tov, wishing congratulations and best wishes. Dear Jordan, have a happy Passover from a proud Reformed Jew. It's very strange that I got that in the mail.
That's very strange. So was there no return address on this?
No return address.
So we don't know who this Reformed Jew is.
Right.
Oh, okay. Very, very interesting. So you can't even write them back.
They're proud of being a Reformed Jew, but they're not proud of who they actually are.
It's very bizarre.
Bizarre.
Those letters with no explanation who they're from. You don't know. It's weird that someone would sign it a Reformed Jew.
We all get different junk mail, but this feels more innocuous. It's definitely not asking me for money. Even the church one didn't. It was just telling me where I can attend their virtual services to help celebrate the rebirth of Jesus.
Okay, who was a Jew?
Yeah, but it's ironic to me that I got them both in the same week. Like, hey, help us celebrate the rebirth of Jesus. Hey, help celebrate.
Easter and Passover, of course, are around the same time. They're both kind of spring holidays. So
yeah, the
we
Last
don't have
Supper.
A fun bunny for Passover. We need an animal mascot. What do we got? Like a goat?
It's pretty clear that the Last Supper was probably a Passover Seder.
It does seem like they were drinking a lot of wine.
Yep. And double dipping.
And I guess they were in such a rush to kill Jesus, they didn't have time for the bread to rise.
Well, it's got to be sometime around that area that some of these Jewish conspiracy theories started about the Jews wanting to control everything, because right after, that's when they started pinning they pinned the death of Jesus on us.
I know. I used to have a joke in my act saying, people are upset with the Jews because they killed Jesus, but you're welcome. If we didn't kill Jesus, they'd have nothing to believe in.
Right? You'd have to be paying full price for chocolate right now.
Yeah, where's my Easter card, God damn it?
I can respond to them. I can try to send them your address. Maybe next time they'll put something in the mail for you.
I hope so, but I think I ruined your segue into talking about...
Trust me, you can never. We're always going to find an inroad to talk about Jewish conspiracy theories. You don't even really need a segue these days. Apparently, they're just there for the waiting to be brought up.
Yeah, QAnon, which we've talked about many times before, is pretty much, shrouded in anti-Semitism. They're still keeping going the anti-Semitism, even though pretty much everything Q told his followers never came to fruition. Now they're changing it to like a new world order. I don't know. From the beginning, they've said the Jews were in cahoots with the Chinese on this virus. Of course, now Asian hate is in the spotlight right now. Of course, I think, Trump wasn't helping that with his whole, China virus, Kung flu bullshit. But anyways, the Jews were not involved with the coronavirus. This isn't a plot for us to take over the world. But one thing that I think is crazy is, someone else we've talked about on the show, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Definitely not a fan of hers. She's a wacko in Congress. She's the Georgia congresswoman. An outspoken member of QAnon. We've talked to her. You remember, she's the idiot that said, the Jewish lasers were the cause of the wildfires in California. So these Orthodox Jews, though, have embraced Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Okay, so
they totally support her.
There's a lot to unpack here. So first of all, the first thing I find kind of troubling and or weird is that, like, there were all these articles basically saying that QAnon was rebranding itself and focusing more on the conspiracy that the Jews and the Chinese are in cahoots and doing that, which isn't really a rebranding. Like, they just basically abandoned some of the stuff that they were touting that was going to happen on January 6th and Trump being reinstated. All that stuff kind of just, not part of their talking points anymore.
Yeah, they're rounding up all the Democrats and Biden, and they're all going to jail because they're all horrible. Nothing came true. Nothing. And not bullshit.
The Marjorie Taylor Greene thing, I think, is even more disturbing because this Orthodox group invited her to sort of take part in these Passover and other Jewish traditions. They wanted to show her the real Judaism. They wanted to, bring her a better perspective, sort of inform her a bit better about what real Judaism looks like, which on its face sounds like it's not a bad idea. Like, people that spout anti-Semitism, once you actually meet people from the Jewish community and you start to know better, there is possibility for change. But the problem is that these are Jews who want to reach out to the Trump base, because there are, we've talked about the problematic pockets of Jewish people who are Trump supporters, who for some reason, also wanted to be able to court the people that are on that side. And I think that it's those Jews that are reaching out to Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, listen, we don't agree with most of the stuff you're saying, but some of it we do. And that's
well, actually, from what I read, they made a lot of excuses, and I think this is like a common trend in Judaism that's happened throughout history, where the more conservative Jews, the more Orthodox Jews, they are so afraid of liberal Jews, they're so afraid of progressive ideas that they'd rather side with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who she's an anti-Semite, okay? She said numerous anti-Semitic things besides the whole Jew laser thing. And by the way, her excuse was she didn't know the Rothschilds were Jewish, which means she's a fucking idiot. And know what the Orthodox Jews, they said, oh, well, since the Rothschilds have done some intermarriage, they're not really Jewish anyways, so it's not anti-Semitic.
Her other big argument is, well, I haven't said any of these crazy things since I've taken office.
Yeah, that's not an argument at all.
Not
Especially
at all.
In today's cancel culture, we are, looking back at what people have 20 years ago in high school and stuff like that. So that's not, oh, she hasn't done it since she's been in Congress. That's not an excuse for anything. But it's just crazy to me, I don't want to always be comparing everybody to Nazis and to Hitler. I think that's a bad habit people have gone into. But the same thing kind of did happen during World War II, where very Orthodox Jews actually kind of were siding with Hitler against socialism and against liberal Jews, and they were throwing them under the bus. And it doesn't matter. We've talked about this before. All Jews are hated by anti-Semites the same. It doesn't matter if you're a Jew that's pro-abortion or anti-abortion. You're just a Jew to haters and bigots.
Well, I think to that same point, that's why I like Passover. I think Passover is, we've a lot of people have said this on the show, and I think we've agreed with a lot of people that Passover is the quintessential Jewish story. It sort of encapsulates a lot of our history into one holiday, talking about our persecution and our resilience, and the fact that when we went through it, when we're going through the Torah portions, God does not make it easy for us, despite the fact that He's on our side and He helps get us out of bondage. The whole.
Well, first he let us be in bondage in the first place. He kept us in bondage. He finally decided to take us out. There was a whole rigmarole around it. It's a crazy story, but it is, like you were saying, it is one of the most common Jewish stories that people know, that we were enslaved in Egypt, that we left Egypt. Apparently, some of the founding fathers wanted to use some imagery of splitting the Red Sea early on, but that didn't happen. It's a big part of biblical history. That story, especially the splitting of the Red Sea, Moses, the Ten Commandments, the whole thing.
But I think it also brings together all the elements of cultural Judaism as well, like the meal, the getting together with family, the fact that you have to sort of painstakingly go through the history a little bit to sort of teach the younger generations and as you get less and less religious, like in my family, there's a little bit of a pandemonium going on, and sometimes in Spanish.
Yes, we've talked about this, I feel like, many times before, where it was a crazy Seder at Jordon's house where
Rosa, our housekeeper who helped serve the meal, and her daughter was there.
And I guess her daughter wasn't very happy about being there, and she was kind of slamming silverware down when she was cleaning. I don't know. And someone asked her, hey, we can't really hear over your slamming. And that infuriated her, and she just started yelling and cursing. And it was a huge scene. And I was almost afraid that Eliyahu wasn't going to come. But I think he did appear at the end. And, I'm sorry, Passover. I'm sorry, Exodus. That was the most exciting part of any Seder I've ever been to.
I mean, it's a good thing we left the door unlocked because she was able to get out of there right away.
For sure. Passover, I remember, when I was growing up, Passover was, I grew up in Miami Beach. I remember a lot of people from New York used to come down for Passover to Florida, stay at the Eden Rock Hotel, the Fontainebleau Hotel. I went to summer camp in New York. I had a lot of friends. So it was kind of like a fun time when they all came down. I got to see them. We got to hang out.
Yeah.
Of course, it's a nice time with the family, and that was kind of nice. I mean, that's such a more, modern Jewish thing that, we're chilling by the pool on Passover.
Yeah,
stuff like that. So that's kind of some of my memories, growing up with Passover. Again, like you were saying, I think it is, the best part is getting the family together. It is good to be sharing these traditions and pass them on. And I mean, I guess that's kind of one of the things our guest wants to do. A rabbi. We have a rabbi on the show, and he's like a young, hip, cool rabbi. And he wrote this Seinfeld Haggadah.
Before we get him in here, I just want to say, I think I've always really enjoyed Passover because of the family thing. I love the fact, we always talk about all the food. And Passover always has my favorite foods. My mom makes the best brisket. One of my aunts is Sephardic, and she makes a meat pie, with a matzah meat pie. That's one of my favorite dishes on Passover that only comes around on Passover. My mom makes the charoset, which is my favorite. Of course, the matzah crack that my mom always makes, the chocolate toffee-covered matzah.
Right. Very good. I think we have a picture of it on our Instagram from Passover 2 years ago.
Yes, we do.
That's always some very good stuff. But of course, like most of the things with Judaism, it comes back down to the food for us.
It always
that
comes.
we really love.
I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, the old joke that I've often said is that you can sum up all of Judaism with three phrases: "They tried to kill us, we won. Let's eat." That's the history of Judaism in a nutshell.
Yeah, any bad thing that happens, pretty much, they're like, well, let's get a bagel and schmear, and we'll be okay.
And I do think, a lot of people have said this, and I'm pretty sure our guest is going to agree with us, that the Passover Seder is the easiest way in to sort of bridge the gap between ultra-religious and people that are sort of casual and people that don't know anything about it at all. It has a real structure. It's a scripted meal. There are certain foods. There's wine. You get to sort of sit however you want. You recline. You're having a good time despite the.
Well, you're supposed to lean. I guess you can't really sit the way you want.
Well, you're supposed to recline.
I don't know if I agree with you on that, Jordan, because I think that what we've definitely seen and like what we were talking about before is. Some people want to do the Seder at their own pace, in their own way. They want to tell the story, but they don't want to necessarily go page for page in the Haggadah. And I think that more Orthodox Jews will look down on those Jews, unfortunately, and consider them not real Jews. And would rather take the side of someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene than someone that's going to, do a more progressive style of the Seder.
I think that even a progressive style, though, is designed specifically to teach the history of our people and to the younger generations. And when you have somebody there that's not Jewish, that might not know the story, this is one of the stories that I think really teaches about the history, that shows why we do certain things, why we have, I mean, the four questions: why do we do this? Why do we do that? What is different about this particular holiday? I think those touch points. You even get just having like the Cliff's Notes version of it still informs, and that's its purpose.
I think different Jews view things differently. They'll want to have what just with kind of matzah. Whether they have the regular square matzah, they have the round shmura matzah. So it's definitely a good time to educate people about Passover and learn a little bit about one of the biggest stories of Jewish persecution. But
right.
I still think there is some discrepancies amongst Jews of what is like the right way to really celebrate the holiday and continue the traditions, and what's the wrong way. And while I personally think there is no wrong way, and if you're participating and you're getting your family together and sharing the story, you're doing the right thing. Other people don't, and other Jews, and I think it's really unfortunate. And I guess that's something we'll talk about with our guest.
Right, because that's what I'm saying. I was trying to make a kind of a segue into the fact that I love our guest, the Seinfeld Haggadah that our guest is.
The Haggadah About Nothing, the unofficial Seinfeld Haggadah, it's called.
I love the idea of trying to make the ceremony and the reasons behind it more relatable, and by using other cultural touch points like Seinfeld, which in my opinion is one of the more pervasive ways that pop culture has taught about Judaism in a certain way,
This is a younger rabbi that we're going to have on the show. So, I mean, he's hip. They brought him into this synagogue in Crown Heights, Kol Israel, that's been around for like nearly 100 years. It's a landmark in the city. It hasn't been doing no good. He's trying to revive it, like Jordan's saying, with doing things that are kind of a little more modern, makes it a little more easier of a gateway, and not such a hard pill to swallow. At making the Seinfeld Haggadah, it's a little more fun.
Yeah.
And just like the regular Haggadah. And it's something different than like, every year we do the same thing. We do the same thing this year. We're mixing it up. So I guess we could ask his opinion on what he thinks about, modernizing more Jewish traditions. Hello, Rabbi.
Hi, how are you?
Yes.
Very well.
All right. Well, welcome to the show, Rabbi Sam Reinstein. Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome.
We're doing good. How are you doing? We're excited to have a rabbi on the show. We haven't had many. So before we get into it, I was actually hoping maybe, is there like a blessing you could give our podcast?
So there's a special blessing that some people have recently been saying on getting the vaccine. Specifically. Okay. It's called Hatov V'Amitiv. Usually the time you usually say it is when you're like having like a second wine. Like the first one was good, but like the second one's great kind of thing. So I guess that's the blessing I would give you, that these podcasts should just keep on getting better.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. All right, I like it. I appreciate that, Rabbi.
Sure.
Do you like being called Rabbi? Did you always want to be a rabbi?
So I don't know how I feel about being called it. But it's kind of like there are some people that I feel like their jobs they didn't like choose it. It kind of like was them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like I was always the rabbi of the group. I was definitely not the funnest one of the group usually, but
Okay.
you know, like there's kind of like the guy that everyone goes to for following for like what are the rules are, or like.
I mean, from what I've learned, it seems like when you get together with other group of other rabbis, you might be the funnest one in the group.
Maybe.
Everything I've read about you kind of leans that way. You know, doing comedy shows at the synagogue, a Comic-Con you did, a Jewish Comic-Con, and of course now the Seinfeld Haggadah. You're a pretty cool rabbi. I gotta say.
I'll fully take that compliment. I don't know if my wife would agree, but
okay. Well, I guess that's a wife's job is not to agree with her husband.
Exactly, that's true.
Where are you from, Rabbi? I'm gonna call you Rabbi because I don't talk to a lot of rabbis.
Sure, that's fine. So I'm originally from Teaneck, New Jersey, not too far away, but live in Brooklyn now, in like Crown Heights, Prospect Heights, that kind of area, near the park.
Were you religious growing up, Sam?
My parents were modern Orthodox. We were religious, but also, fully engaged in TV, sports, went to college. That wasn't a question. All that stuff also.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is actually something that I wanted to ask you because I get asked this question a lot by non-Jewish people. What exactly is modern Orthodox?
Sure. I wish I could really answer that question because it kind of depends. But if just as like a more blanket statement, it kind of takes the viewpoint that you want to fully engage in Jewish tradition, fully engage in it, but also fully understand that the world has a ton to offer and there's a ton to learn from, and that almost leaving that out as part of your life would be negative also. Like you'd get up to the godly gates and God would ask you, like, did you not like appreciate the world you were in, and otherwise you'd miss out. So it's like finding true value in certainly in science and math and things like that, but even more so like things like literature, and I'm expanding it a little bit to TV. Right. in this type of thing, but I think on some level the Haggadah is a bit of in my mind a modern Orthodox project where it's like truly valuing what Seinfeld has to offer and not just seeing it as like a nice thing that I watched.
Right.
So would you almost say it's like an evolution of Judaism being modern Orthodox?
I don't know, because I think it's kind of existed for a really long time, just in different forms. I sometimes like to think of some of the biblical characters in this type of light, even though like it wouldn't have made sense in like a modern context. But like there are a lot of rabbis that like fully engaged in the world, but also were fully religious. Like that's something that's existed for a really long time. It just might only recently has it become like a sect or a movement and that type of thing. But that's probably more due to like kind of copying our Christian neighbors who also kind of did this.
Right.
Where we all separated into like our little like pockets. You don't see that in other parts of the world.
What are your views? A lot of more religious, ultra religious people, they almost look down on more progressive Jews. And like, what would you say to these? Because, we have enough people hating us all over the world. We don't need to be hating each other.
Right. So, I mean, first that, I think that kind of goes both ways, but there's a lot of that going around. It's a major problem, but it's been a major problem throughout our history where we, and maybe a major problem with minorities in general, where, instead of kind of like banding together, you infight. And unquestionably, we should stop doing that. And likely it's one of the big explanations of why we were exiled from Israel like years and years ago because we did that type of stuff. We were just mad at each other because we were like in slightly different sects from each other, and like, who cares? In the end of the day, like, we're all people, we're all Jewish. Like, it doesn't make a difference, and we should all kind of work together.
Right. I mean, that's one of the things that's one of the things that
Go
we've
ahead,
talked
Jordan.
about on this show all the time is that, it's so strange that there are Jews that think you have to be a certain way to be considered Jewish. Like, they don't really, there are Orthodox communities that don't accept converts and things of that nature. But when you get to the look at the people that hate the Jews, the people that, the white supremacists and the anti-Semites out there, they don't make any of those distinctions whatsoever.
Right. They don't care at all.
They don't care. So,
do you think this all just comes from, like the 12 tribes, from them not, Joseph, not, and his brothers not getting along and them hating his brothers? And is this just what it's become now, this many years later?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting parallel, and it's probably true. If, like, on some level, I think part of what was so harmful then is like they were all kind of jockeying for position of who was like the real son. And
who's the real Jew?
Yeah, right. And so people tend to do that always. But I don't think this is unique to Jewish people. Like, I think you see this in a lot of other, Christians go through this between you see the difference in the different sects of Islam. That's pretty strong also. But it's not even just religion. Like, I think you see it in different, different populations within cultures,
just
even,
human
different
nature.
African cultures or different Hispanic cultures or different parts of America, right? Like, you see it just from like coastal people, like people that live in the cities and people that live in rural, like what I mean? Like, people like to kind of self-identify and then kind of.
Right. There's like that. There's those, like that fine line between assimilation and appreciation.
Right. Exactly.
So you're a young man, and from what I understand, you're the rabbi of Kol Israel, which was not a young synagogue. It's been around for almost 100 years, and but they chose you to be the rabbi because they wanted you to kind of spice it up, make it a little more accessible to younger crowds, and bring people in.
So
but I was reading.
Go ahead.
I was reading that one of the problems you said that why the synagogue was losing so many people is because of Jewish hipsters.
Did I write that somewhere? I don't.
It was an article about you
in the
forward.
So what I might have been talking about is just where we are. So it's hard. Like, there's been a push a little bit away from traditional Judaism in the last 100 or so years, 50 or so years. And especially in these more like kind of like deep cities and more liberal places. And so it's been a little bit of a struggle. But in the past couple of years, there's been a tremendous growth of the community. We've had a little hard time just because everyone's moving out of New York in the last year because of COVID. But that's kind of a separate issue.
Right.
But it's also made it very interesting. Like, there's such a diverse community here, like, overall, and there's something special about that has nothing to do with I think as a synagogue we see value in that also. And we've tried to kind of connect to our neighbors, as much as possible, given our size. Not everyone cares.
Right.
That small, 80-person congregation reaches out to them.
So getting fresh people into the synagogue, getting young people into the synagogue, what have you found to be the most successful event or way to do that?
Right. So far, I actually haven't seen events be as successful as just being like nice and welcoming and non-judgmental, and just living your life and letting other people live their life, and just kind of moving forward. That's really what was working for so long for us for the last 5 years or so, is just kind of like a snowball effect of like, wow, this is a place I can be myself. And especially, I think this is true, especially in Orthodox circles sometimes, but I imagine it's true in other places also, is, you want to fit in. and communities tend to like self-perpetuate themselves. Like the same type of people move into the same type of place kind of thing. So that never happened with us, which is great. So it's like all these like different types of Jews all coming together and just, being there to pray and to eat afterwards and to hang out, like it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's great. We got to bring, Jews together, people together. There's too much division. And that makes me wonder, what is your opinion on why the Jews are still hated so much after all this year? It's about to be Passover. We were enslaved. We got freedom, and we are still fighting with anti-Semitism these days.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Right. Well, I mean, it's I write about it in the Haggadah, but it's crazy that it's in the Haggadah. Like this book that we've been reading for like, at this point, like, thousands of years, like literally talks about how in every generation there's somebody that hates us, and like, we still got it. Like it's on target. I don't know. I read a really cool article. I think it was in the Atlantic a couple years ago about the idea of punching up. I don't know if you probably understood this concept, but like there aren't so many, like usually when there's somebody to hate, like you feel icky about doing it. So if like, usually like no one wants to be called a racist, right? Like just like even people that really are racist, like don't usually want to take that mantle, because it's like you're kind of like, you feel like you're punching down, meaning like there's a community that's doing worse off than you are, and you don't want to be seen as like the one in power. No one wants to be seen as the one in power. But at least the conspiracies around Jewish people is that we're like too high up, right? Not that we're like,
right.
Like we're poor mannered or this or that, but we're too rich or we're too powerful. And so like, it's easy to like hate somebody that you don't need to feel like, you can still feel as the victim when you're hating them.
Right.
That feels like it rings true. I'm not sure.
Although it is a weird argument to have. Like we are, the Jews think that they are superior to us, so therefore we can punch up. But in fact, we believe that they are inferior to us.
Right.
They're almost mad because they think we're inferior, but we're doing better than them. So that kind of pisses them off.
Right.
Well,
I mean, it's definitely not something that's logical, right? There's like, I saw somebody that was writing like about how like we run capitalism, and like a couple days earlier, somebody was arguing that we were pushing all the socialist policies. So I'd love to get them in the room and see what they think if they talk to each other, how they figure that out. But it's just like, kind of arguing that people are in control, and it's like easy to hate that type of person.
Yeah. Have you gotten an opportunity to sort of lead any services outside of New York, or around the country? Because New York really has like, New York, Florida and California are really the three big enclaves of Jewish community, but New York especially. Like, there's the old joke that Lenny Bruce used to say, that if you're from New York, no matter how Goyish you are, you're Jewish.
Right.
And if you're from the Midwest, no matter how Jewish you are, you're Goyish. So like the whole New York sensibility comes out of New York.
Yeah.
Like even going back to my favorite thing about the 2,000-year-old man ever, the 2,000-year-old man?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
When Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner made it, it was just for their friends. They never thought anybody would outside of New York would get the humor or that New York sensibility. And they were told over and over again that they had to record it, and finally they did. And I think it was Clark Gable. Somebody brought it and played it for the Queen of England, who loved it. This is just, like broke,
right.
So like it's such a relatable thing.
I mean, Seinfeld fits into that really well.
And Seinfeld fits into it exactly. It's exactly we were talking about before we brought you on about how Seinfeld itself is like. Judy, almost like the Jewish New York sensibility 101 for the world.
Yeah.
But I wonder how you felt about,
so
people in those communities outside.
I
New
actually
York.
spent 2 summers interning in a community in Kansas City. And it was amazing. Like, in particular, my family, my wife loves cities, and she was very nervous that I would get a job in like somewhere like Kansas City. And because I love the community so much, everyone worked together, like not even within the Orthodox community, everyone worked together, but even forgetting about that, like there was one Jewish school for the entire community. It was amazing. It was really something so different than anything I had experienced before. And part of the reason why we pushed so hard to move to Brooklyn when we moved here is because, like, the way I describe Kol Israel is that it's like a shul or a synagogue that like feels like it's from like Kansas City or Ohio or Iowa or whatever. Mm-hmm. And like for some reason it's plopped down in the middle of Brooklyn and you're just like confused. You walk in and you're confused, like, why is this in this city? That's kind of what it feels like. And so it kind of hit both of what we both liked. Like for me, it was like what I liked about the community, and she still gets to, not have a car and use the subway.
Right. Where is your wife from?
She's from Connecticut.
From Connecticut. Okay.
Yeah. Not too far.
So you've always been a Seinfeld fan.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I found it in college, actually.
Right. I read that you did not watch it during its initial run.
Yeah. So I'm not to give away my age too much, but I was like a little kid then. So, and I imagine my parents actually didn't watch it either. I imagine it's because me and my sister were little then, and I don't know if you can make time to like, be at the TV at a certain time every night, especially when it's like bedtime. But yeah, I found it in college. My roommate just showed me an episode, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
It was like the middle of finals week, and I watched the entire thing in like 2.5 weeks. It was crazy.
Yeah.
I did okay. Probably not as well as I should have, but
and you studied mathematics in college, is that right?
I did, right.
So that's very interesting that you're almost a man of science, math, logic, but you're also a rabbi, which kind of seems like things that usually butt heads.
Yeah. So, but it's part of the kind of like I really see like religious value in math, like not even to. I mean, I could get into specific things, but like just more generally, just like understanding how the world works. Like I mostly studied probability stuff. Mm-hmm. I was an actuary for a while. And like really kind of more understanding how the world works is like part of understanding what, like, at least in my perspective, what God's world is like. Like, how did God create the world? And like, this is like kind of probabilistic sense is like kind of a different way of looking at things. So I don't really see it as butting heads. I know it feels like it does. But it felt very natural.
Yeah. Well, where did the idea for the
how long did it take you to like decide after, killing Seinfeld in 2 weeks that you wanted to turn it into a Haggadah?
So that idea was much later, but it's definitely a while coming, right? Nice that you guys both had the same question. At the same time. Basically, it's something that I've wanted to do for a while, like meaning in Seinfeld kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the Haggadah is just so prone to that type of messaging, especially because there are just so many people that have written on this one book. Like, you just don't find the same amount of content on just about anything else.
And but there's so many different versions of a Haggadah as well. Like exactly. I went to a friend's Passover Seder a number of years ago where everybody brought their own Haggadah. Everybody had a different Haggadah at this. It was like 25 of us.
Yeah, exactly.
25 different Haggadahs.
Something my father's done since I was born at least, has bought a new one every year.
Okay.
And so I read through just about all of them in order to prepare for this. And like, obviously, you know which one he bought this year. But
well, I hope so.
I guess he didn't buy it. But it's something that's always been something that, like, I don't know, it's kind of like a rabbinic like kind of rite of passage to write a Haggadah anyways. So because you build up all these ideas over time, and I kind of put them all together, but then connected them to different ideas that I had on the show. So right. A lot of these
Did you have any fear? Did you have any fear that people were going to interpret this as being disrespectful to Passover?
So it's funny. I didn't have that much of a fear, but my family did, if that makes sense. Like, I heard that a bunch. But the way I kind of explained it is, like, I wasn't bringing the Haggadah down. I was, like, bringing Seinfeld probably too far up.
Right.
Like, that was kind of the way, like, I was probably taking Seinfeld too seriously, not making the Haggadah too much of a joke. Like, I was kind of treating Seinfeld as if it was like a real text. like there are a bunch of times in the Haggadah where you would expect it to go the other way, where I have an idea on the Haggadah and I'm like, look how this is in Seinfeld or how it fits in Seinfeld. There are times where it went the other way.
Right. The double dipping thing is very.
That was a good example of that.
Yeah.
We're like, but that's actually how that came to be. I rewatched that episode with the Haggadah in mind. I'm like, that's why we dip at the Seder. And like, it had nothing. I actually had a question on the Haggadah. I didn't have an answer. And then Seinfeld kind of gave me the answer and there were about 5 or 6 times when that happened.
Yeah.
It's a good example of like how, like there really is kind of wisdom in this. It's about how people kind of want to be, and it should be treated with kind of like, even if it's funny, it should with like the respect that it kind of deserves.
Yeah.
How would you summarize the beauty of Judaism if you were talking to either someone that strayed from the flock, a non-Jewish person, didn't have a lot of time? What would you say to them?
Yeah. So, I mean, I can only talk from my own personal experience, I guess. Because I feel like, I mean, first and foremost, like religion is something that is so often not treated as personal, but it's so personal. Like just your connection, or your connection to your culture or to your people is like such a personal thing that it's hard to like tell somebody else what the most beautiful thing is, because for them it's almost definitionally something different. But kind of the way I see it is like, I don't know, I get this like opportunity hundreds of times a day to connect to something that's been going on for thousands of years. And like some of that is like religious in nature, like praying and like wearing tzitzit or like wearing my kippah or like things like that, like they're religious in nature. But a lot of them aren't religious in nature, just like how you look at the world, what types of things you watch, what types of things you do, how you act. So hundreds of times a day, you get to connect to something. The way I try to explain it to people in my head is like, I don't know, I'm a big Mets fan, and also Nets fan, which is great now. Yeah. But like people love sports, I think partially because you get to connect to this whole group. Like you love going to games because like there's all these people cheering together and you feel like you're part of something. And I don't know, I feel like when you do stuff that's Jewish, not necessarily traditional or religious, but when you do stuff that's Jewish, you get to connect to that all the time. And like, how amazing is that like I have this opportunity to connect to something that's literally 3,000 years old, like hundreds of times a day. Not everyone like is in that place. But it's something really special and, like not to be taken for granted.
Yeah.
Rabbi, we like to ask all our guests this, and I think it actually works really well considering that it's the Seinfeld Haggadah. Is there anything you'd like to kvetch about? I feel like Jerry, George, they were always kvetching.
Yeah.
Now's your turn to kvetch, Rabbi.
Oh, just in general or about anything specific?
Anything you want to kvetch about.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. So you just asked Jewish people what they want to complain about?
Yes.
Like, oh, gosh. Like, that must go on for a while.
We have a few more open-ended questions after that, but,
Got it. It's actually something that I'm actually bad at this. I know that sounds like a weird thing. Like, I'm a bad complainer because I'm, like, really grateful for things. So I actually need to think about this. Man, can this pandemic just end? I mean, is that like good enough?
It's whatever you like, Rabbi. Yeah. Rabbi, what's your favorite Jewish holiday?
So weirdly, Yom Kippur. I know that sounds odd, but it's hard, and I like that. I kind of like that we take one day just to think about stuff, because our days move so quickly, and one day a year we kind of just sit and don't do anything. Don't have all these other things that like are available to us, and you're just sitting there and you're like somewhat bored. But I think that's like by design almost. Yeah. Is that like, it's kind of good to just be sitting there and actually thinking about your life, once a year. So I'm always really grateful of that.
Cool. Do you have a favorite Jewish food?
Let me think about that for a second. Because like, I've always grown up with good challah, but I really love a good piece of gefilte fish.
Okay.
And I know this
hey,
out of nowhere.
No one has said either of those answers, I don't think, by the way.
Oh, whoa. Okay. So.
And challah is a huge one. I can't believe it. Actually, when you said it, I was like, how does no one said challah? It's delicious. Non-Jews love challah. How many times
have you asked this question? No one said challah?
No one said challah.
That's crazy. But I feel like when people think of gefilte fish, they think of like what comes in the jars, like the gooey, icky stuff. Like that's awful. Like that's not what I'm talking about. Like a good piece of it's kind of like gefilte fish is like oranges. Like when you have like a really good orange, it's like really special. And it's like that type of thing. Like a really good piece of gefilte fish is great.
Or what's the fruit that Kramer
the
is like?
peach.
Yeah, the Mackinac. So that's
there you go, the tie-in, right?
Rabbi, do you have a favorite Jew? It could be fictional, biblical, someone from your life, anyone.
I would love to pick somebody from each of those categories. But there's a biblical character I love the most, and it's random. It's Elisha. It's Elijah's like main student. Comes up in the later Kings. But he's he like goes around like the country just doing miracles for people. Like it's like somebody breaks their hammer and he just takes the bottom of the hammer and throws it at it and it just fixes itself. It's like stuff like that. And he's such a cool character because it's like all these like minor stories that don't really seem to connect with each other. And he's just like going around doing miracles for people. And it's like really like you don't see most miracles are like done for the nation or like these big displays of like against like the idols or whatever. He's like the one character that like goes around and like helps the little guy over and over again. Like somebody needs to get pregnant.
Random acts of kindness.
Yeah. And it's like really
I never heard of him before.
Yeah, it's worth because it's minor. It's like it's a couple chapters, and like it's after Elijah, and Elijah's like the big guy, and like everyone knows those big stories. But these are these like tiny stories that are like really kind of fun and really random and kind of weird sometimes. There's a whole bunch of them.
Rabbi, where I know, it's already Passover. It's not a lot of time for people to get the Haggadah, but if they want to buy one for next year or they want to get it for a gift or just to have, where can they find it?
Yeah, so the easiest place is Amazon. I published it through Amazon, so it should come pretty quickly. But I do think it's like Haggadahs don't need to be reserved just for the Seder. It's easy for me to say that when I'm selling one, but
you could buy one. You could read it year round.
Right. You can read it year round. But it is nice that there's a push on one part of the year. But like I've been reading Haggadahs for the last 8 months. Like it's not something, granted to prepare for this, but like Passover is such a universal story, and like it's not something that really needs to be reserved for these two days or whatever, these 7 days, whatever, however long you celebrate. Like it doesn't need to be reserved for one night. Like it really is something that, at least in like traditional Judaism, like you bring up every day and you bring up every Friday night and you bring up all the time, like this leaving Egypt. So it doesn't need to be something that's just reserved. And what I hope happens also is that people then, I put in the footnotes, like where all the episodes are. Like I kind of hope people like go back, watch an episode and are like, and then like kind of look back at the Haggadah and it has like this interplay throughout the year, which you can't do at Seder night, unfortunately. At least for people that are Orthodox. That
would make it a really long Seder.
Right.
And in between, they got to watch the half-hour episode.
The past couple of weeks, I've been giving classes where I show clips, and I've been teaching them with the sources. Mm-hmm. It's been really fun. But in like an hour, I get through 3 or 4 of them, so it's not kind of the same. But like I hope people do that for themselves. So it's kind of like a book that can be good, like especially not on Passover night. Like when you have like the streaming service, when it's finally on Netflix, I guess. When you have like Netflix open in front of you, you really can actually like find things and kind of like have an interplay and use it. So I hope people do that. I don't know if they will, but that's the hope.
Great.
Is there anything else, Rabbi, that you'd like to plug? If someone wants to take one of these classes, how can they do that?
So it's something I'll probably do it again next year before Passover. So if you like kind of like look for those things around this time of year, I'll probably be doing it forever at this point. It's kind of cool to now. This is my thing now.
Right.
which is great to have a thing. Like, I feel like having a podcast like this gives you a thing, you know, you're like, whenever somebody introduces you, it's like, this is who I am. I don't really have anything to plug. I think just people should, hopefully people can, like specifically look at this Passover as something special, because it's really hard, because we can't do it in the way we normally do it, like with friends and family. But I think there's also something special about it. Like last year, we did two seders, and one of them we did just with, he was turning 4 at the time, and we did like an express just for kids seder.
Okay.
And it was amazing, and it was so great, because it was like fun the entire way through, and he loved it, and he kind of lost it near the end, but it was close enough. And then the second one, me and my wife just talked the entire time, and it's really nice. And I think we should, like, this pandemic has been awful, and no amount of silver lining will make all the deaths worth it in any, there's nothing that could happen to make that worth it. Right. But one of these minor silver linings has been like kind of giving people a time to just be with the people that they live with.
Right.
And there's something beautiful in that also. And I never get that opportunity personally, just because, like, when you're the rabbi, you're hosting and you're doing things like that. So I hope people can make it special. Like, I even know of one person who was planning on not doing a Seder this year, and then saw this Haggadah, and she's a huge Seinfeld fan, but she's like in her 80s and was just so tired from last year, wasn't going to do it, and decided to do it this year because of this. And frankly, writing the book was worth it just for that. It's
really sweet.
It's yeah. I mean, like, I've heard some stories like similar to that, and like it's been like amazing, and people should take that opportunity. Like, it's even with all the negativity that's happening in the world, like kind of like use it as a unique opportunity. Even if it's not a good situation, it's at least a unique one. So I hope people do that.
Awesome, Rabbi. Well, we hope you'll come back on the show, and we can talk more things. It's great to, speak with a progressive rabbi that's interested in taking Judaism into the future and not just clinging to the past. And we really appreciate you coming on the show and talking with us and sending us a copy of the Haggadah. We are very grateful. Thank you, Rabbi.
All right. This was a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me on. And I hope to do that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Great,
have a happy Passover. Hope you have a
happy Passover.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Oh, well, that was a lot of fun. A huge mazel and a thank you and a Hag Sameach to Rabbi Sam Reinstein for coming on the show and talking about his book, The Seinfeld Haggadah. We hope you guys have a happy Passover as well.
Yeah, we'll put a link to the Amazon book if you want to buy it in, the summary of the episode. We wish everybody a great Passover, whether you're spending with your family or not. If you don't care about Passover, it's springtime. You should be happy about that. And, of course, as always, you can follow us across social media at American Jew Podcast. Email us at AmericanJewPodcast@gmail.com. Sign up for our Patreon, American Jew. And, of course, I'm Jonathan Randall on all social media.
And you can follow me on social media. I'm at Beatnik Nudnik on Instagram, and my other podcast is at Where's the Grief across all platforms. Thank you guys for listening. Hag Sameach to you.